Hey everybody, this is Garrett with Earth and Time, and today we're at one of the best fossil localities in all of Texas, a place known as Whiskey Bridge along the Brazos River, about an hour and a half north of Houston, Texas. About 35 to 40 million years ago, the ocean came this far north and deposited a whole bunch of sea life up here. And we're going to hopefully see things like gastropod shells and bivalve shells and some corals, and maybe if we're really lucky, maybe in a shark's tooth. One of the rarest things to find here. There are over 250 different types of specimens that have been found at this location already. So with that being said, let's go check out the Whiskey Bridge fossil locality. I'm sitting along what's known as the Brazos River, just outside of College Station, or Bryan, College Station, Texas area, which is the home of Texas A&M, the home of the Aggies. Because the Brazos River cuts through this part of Texas, and it's a pretty major river, it actually exposes a lot of the geology or stratigraphy here, including some ancient ocean deposits from around 40 million years ago. And these cliff faces that we see looking westerly along the river here are actually made up of what is known as the Stone City Formation. And this is a notable geologic formation in Texas dating back to the Middle Eocene, or as I mentioned before, about 40 million years ago, back when there was an ancient ocean that covered this portion of the state. We can actually start talking about and looking at the stratigraphy that's here. And the stratigraphy is really made up of one, what we call a member, that's part of a formation that then is part of a group. So much like biology thinks of taxa, thinking about the families and species and genus, in geology, we do something similar with stratigraphy, where we start thinking about the group. So we're in what's known as the Claiborne group here, which is Eocene in age, roughly around 40 million years old. And within that, we're in what's known as the Crockett Formation. And within the Crockett Formation, we're sitting here in the Stone City member of the Crockett Formation. Now, within that Stone City member, there's actually what are known as beds. So we can actually see Mosley bed, or the Mosley bed, excuse me. And then we have other beds in here. We have the Silty Muddy bed. We have one they call the MGB, or the main glauconite bed, so we're within what's known as the Crockett Formation, the Stone City member. We're going to pay attention to this Mosley bed, and we're going to take a look at that. This is a limestone bed, which is basically a coquina here. It's full of shells, and we're not going to be able to get fossils out of that, but we can definitely take a look at it, and it's a good marker bed to tell us when we're on the top of the Stone City member. So what we're going to look for today is evidence that there was once a sea here. So one of the things we do as geoscientists, or as scientists, is we make observations along the way. So I've been told there's lots of sea fossils here, right? Or marine fossils here. Let's go see if we can find some of those, which of course, when people first started seeing those deposits up here, they'd ask, how do they get this far away from the ocean, 160, 170 miles away? Well, and it turns out that the sea has really changed throughout geologic time. Now, today, the ocean is about 160, 170 miles that direction if we were going down to where Galveston was at from here. So it gives you an idea about how much the ocean has changed through time. In fact, the ocean actually came through Texas on multiple occasions. Once during the time of the dinosaurs, known as the Cretaceous Interior Seaway, big seaway cutting through the United States, actually split the United States into two separate land masses. And then again, we had incursions of the ocean through time as various events took place, like the lowering and rising of sea level due to glaciation and to glaciers throughout the Paleocene, or post the time of the dinosaurs. Let's hike along the river here and see if we can see evidence of some of this ancient life. So I just walked about 20, 30 steps or so, and I've already found what we call a coquina, or a limestone full of shells, and we can actually look inside of this rock and we can see all kinds of bivalves that are in here. And maybe I was trying to see if I can see any kind, maybe some kind of a echinoderm in here, but you can clearly see the shells that are in here. So we're already seeing evidence of this ancient life here. Now, this isn't anything you can collect, because this is in what we call coquina, or it's solidified, it's a limestone. But this is our first evidence of this ancient life here. Now, one of the things I read said there are over 250 species that have been identified here, including sharks based on the shark teeth that they find here, gastropods, so think of snails, bivalves like we just saw. There's actually corals that you can find here. So these are all things we see today that would lead us to believe that this would have been a marine environment, right? We don't see a lot of coral growing in these rivers. Coral grows out in the ocean. So seeing all that type of evidence leads us to believe that, hey, there was indeed an ancient ocean that ran right through this section. So they often call this area the Stone City Bluffs as well, and that's because these limestone chunks that you can see here along the edge of the bridge pylon actually make up the bluffs here because they're very resistive and they are very, very fossil rich. So while I'm walking, let's talk about why they call this Whiskey Bridge. So we're in between two counties here in Texas. We're on the Burleson side of the county line, and across the river there is Brazos County. Now in Brazos County, you used to be able to have some types of alcohol. It wasn't totally dry, but maybe just things like beer, but you weren't allowed to have liquor, things like whiskey. So folks who lived over in Brazos County would drive across the bridges above me here to go get their whiskey or liquor, hence the name Whiskey Bridge. Although we're looking for fossils, one of the cool things to see are all the tracks along the river here, and these are actually raccoon tracks. They look like little tiny hands out there. Little tiny hands. Okay, so I found a bluff here. Let's go ahead and take a look and see if we can find any collectible shells in this section. We can actually see and talk a little bit about the stratigraphy here too, and how stratigraphy is when it's deposited as flat lines. So think like layers of a cake. And so what we can figure out with this is that I know the layers down below had to come before the layers on top of them, right? So the stuff down here is older than the stuff as we look up, and you can see those white marker beds across there where you can really see how flat what we call the stratigraphy is here. And it looks like I'm actually walking along what's known as the glauconite bed. So this is a green bed of shale. The shoreline would have been miles in that direction to the north when this glauconite bed was being deposited. So within about 2 minutes, I've already found 3 pretty cool looking shells. Found evidence of ancient burrows. So these are pretty interesting. So if you see where there's this really brown to dark, I don't know, amber color, these are actually ancient burrows, and these could be ancient burrows for something like, I don't know, a lobster or crabs or some kind of shrimps. And the reason it's been preserved is they were digging through really soft sediments, things like mud. Less soft sediments filled it up and lithified and became preserved to show us where these burrows were at. That's pretty cool to see. There's a whole row of these things. In fact, you can identify them because they have that rusty looking color. And the reason that's happening is because the material that's filling the burrows is actually more porous and permeable and allows fluids to go through them. And those fluids often carry other material or minerals, things like iron. And so you get this iron staining associated with them. And I think seeing that is as cool as finding any fossil shell out here. The only thing that would be cooler is if I can find a shark's tooth. Here's a really nice example, and here's my hand for scale, of some of these shaly units. You'll see they're very friable. They just break apart. And in this case, this one looks pretty fossil poor. So I don't see any shells in here. So this would have been somewhere where a lot of life wasn't living. However, we can see just above it one of these burrows I was talking about, and you can see the changing in color. So these whatever they were, lobsters, crabs, some kind of shrimp, were living inside of the upper part of this muddy layer. And I did knock a piece off here, and you can see portions, all kinds of pieces of shells, but not a single nice identifiable shell that we can keep. All right, so I moved up on the bluff a little bit. I hiked up this little slope so I can get a little closer to this outcrop, and I can see little shells sticking out way up there, but I probably can't get to them. I'll see if there's some a little lower down I can get to and share with you all. So within a couple minutes of just shuffling through this material, I found 3 different shells, a little gastropod shell, some kind of maybe plecipod shell, this upper one, and then some other kind of gastropod tube type feature. But you can see there are already some pretty interesting looking shells out here. One of the interesting observations to make right away is there's very fossiliferous layers up there, and you see all those white specks up there. Those are all shells. And then I come down here and there are almost no shells in this section, and then I go a little deeper again and there's not a lot of shells, but there's clearly signs of life. There are some shells in this red-brown stuff that's down here, but not as many as I thought there'd be, or they're all lithified, like we can see here. So lithified just means that they're part of a rock, so some kind of limestone. And you'll see there's lots of shells in here, but again, I can't collect any of those ones. Soft layer like this one in front of me, and I'm digging in here and I'm not seeing a single piece of seashell in this section. But then if I go up a little bit, and there's lots and lots up there, and I found a whole bunch of tiny shells. So obviously that environment was a very happy environment for the sea life. Paleontologists and geologists will take those observations and try to understand what they call the EOD, or the environment of deposition, and even understand maybe what could be happening using modern day analogs from the ocean to say, okay, we see lots of life in this area, and these are the types of creatures we see: gastropods and bivalves, and we see coral and sharks. What kind of environment could that be? And then they'll look at the next rock unit that has none of that. So what could that tell us? And where do we see those types of environments today in the ocean? And that gives paleontologists and geologists hints about what life was like here 40 million years ago. All right, so I've been collecting a little bit longer. Lots of gastropods. There's part of a bivalve. Some really fascinating gastropods, like this one right down here is really kind of cool. It's kind of fattish compared to the longer, what we call turritellid ones. The pelecypods, which are kind of like oysters. You can see there's a lot of variety, and if I just pan up to where I'm actually looking right now, you'll see shells just all over, including, you know, a bivalve right there, and some more of the pelecypods. And then actually here's a nice little gastropod right there. You can see in situ, which means in place, and we can just see that fossil hash all the way across. So definitely a lot of fossils to collect here. Most of them have all been really small at this point, so I've thrown a lot back, if you will, because they're very small. But it is really neat seeing all the variety and the different types of life that were living 40 million years ago in this part of Texas. I mentioned earlier when we were talking about the burrows that we can see here, that the water flowing through the burrows, because the burrows are more permeable, they can allow water to go through more readily and easily, carry a lot of minerals with it. In this case, a lot of iron. And we can actually see the iron banding here, and they call this Lysagongan banding. And this is a pretty common occurrence to see in iron-rich waters when they go through sediments. A nice example of one too. In fact, you can see a nice cross-section of it where you can see the banding on the outside, or the more concentrated iron going through the sandstone. This is probably an example of one of those burrows. Another nice example of one of these burrows, you can see it running right through, kind of making a Y shape. That's the darker brown section in there, and you can see how it's long and elongated. So some kind of maybe shrimp, or maybe some kind of worm, or a small crab. See how it's just surrounded by shales. So these creatures would go through this mud and eat whatever was in there, and also use this burrow as their home and for protection. Really gives you an idea about the life that was here in this part of Texas. And actually not only being able to see body fossils, like all the shells that we're finding and seeing, but actually seeing the burrows tells us more about their movement and how they lived, which is pretty exciting to see both together, and really helps tell us this story of this deep water environment where all these creatures were living here. All right, I made it to the other side of the bridge, and I'm seeing larger shell fragments here. I've actually found some larger shells and more ornate shells on this side that you can see right about in the middle now. And if I move over to the other side, you can see another big turritella or gastropod there. Here are two more I just found. They are definitely larger and more ornate on this side of the bridge thus far. I am seeing if I can find any of the big conical shells I've seen out here before to share with you all. Spending about 15 more minutes over on this section on the south side of the river, you'll see some of the great fossils I found. Look at this conical feature, or this conical one. Look at this pelecypod or oyster shell. Some beautiful bivalves, some spectacular ornate, some more conical ones. So definitely the side to come visit. More conical ones. Look at this really pretty one, and its ornate design on its shell. Gorgeous. A couple more pointers if you're coming here to do fossil collecting. One is you will get dirty. It is muddy here. You will want good shoes. You are going to get dirty. 2, have a pair of tweezers to help grab some of the fossils would be really good, and be very careful when you're trying to remove layers to look for the fossils. The other thing is, watch out for poison ivy. I did see some here and I didn't have my camera out at the time because I was trying to avoid it, but there is poison ivy here, so make sure you keep your eyes open for that. All right, so before we head home, I have one more special stop for you all. Are you ready for this? I'm in the town of Caldwell, Texas, about 15 minutes from Whiskey Bridge, and I had to come a little bit out of my way to check out this location because I have found the T-Rex gas station. Everything here has a T-Rex on it, from the pavilion top here to the gas pumps themselves. Rawr! So excited. And it definitely has this country store look to it, but check out that T-Rex at the very top. And as I enter, check this out. It's also known as Rockin' G. As you know, a lot of my friends and subscribers call me G. So it was meant for me to find this place, Rockin' G Oil Company. Let's go check it out. Ooh. And they have merch. Check this out. I'm gonna have to buy myself a T-Rex hat for sure. Even have ones with a T-Rex on it and that just say T-Rex. Of all different colors. All right, this is gonna be a tough call on which one I need to get today. And they have special T-Rex exclusive drinks. Maybe the best rhyme scheme ever, T-Rex tacos. They have kolaches. For any of you not familiar with kolaches, they're a sausage wrapped in a bread, and often they have jalapenos or cheese on the inside. One of my favorite things about Texas, and something you can't really find outside of Texas. I guess since this is a T-Rex, these would be what T-Rex would eat. This is T-Rex food bags or meal bags. They are cute though. And they have a burger place. I'm here on a Sunday, so they just closed, but the owner told me I'd come in here and take a snapshot of their menu for you. Meats, food, bowls. I'm definitely coming back. Especially, I want to eat what that T-Rex is eating. Oh, and look at the kids' menu. Rawr, delicious. Dinosaur nuggets. They have signature drinks. Okay, had to come and take you to check out this really unique gas station called T-Rex. I'll show you what hat I get here in a second. Before I get there, check this out, T-Rex cups. Definitely has the old Country Time store, but with the overlay and the theme of T-Rex. I'm in such a happy place right now. And check this out, they only have mediums, but I do like the hoodie. All right, I'm struggling between, I really like that one, and I really like that one with the patch that says T-Rex with the waterfall in the background. I'm not sure which one I'm going to get. That one. Ooh, they got the hats and they have a special going on right now for short sleeves $15.99 and long sleeves $15.99. What? All right, turned out that other color wasn't quite my size, so I'm grabbing this one. I'm excited. Pretty ridiculous I'm this excited about a gas station, but I hope this becomes a chain. I'm in. Thank you all for joining me today to check out the fossils at Whiskey Bridge and learn a little bit more about what we do as geoscientists and paleontologists, and to also explore that amazing gas station. How cool was that T-Rex truck stop? I'm really excited to visit there again. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel to keep up on all my adventures, both geology and history about Texas and beyond, as well as make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you learned something new. If you enjoyed it, please leave comments down below. Tell me, have you gone fossil collecting here, or do you know other great spots in Texas? Or there's some other places you're interested in that I can go cover here in the Texas area and beyond. So with that being said, thanks again, take care, and I'll see you all on the next adventure.